Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman. A quick update from me and then chat, and we'll take every one of them at the end. It's Monday, the 5th of August, day 304 of the October 7th war. Today is the 5th birthday of Ariel Bibas. Instead of birthday celebrations, for the past 304 days, Ariel has been held captive by Hamas, along with his father, Yarden, his mother, Shiri, and younger brother, Kfir, who was just 9 months old when he was kidnapped. The Bibas family remain in captivity. The Prime Minister's made clear that Israel is making a supreme effort on a daily basis to return all of our 115 hostages. He emphasized the return of all of our hostages without exception. We have an ironclad commitment to return all of them, the living and the ones which Hamas have already killed. The Prime Minister instructed the delegation to leave for Cairo. In order to continue the negotiations, Israel insists that the maximum number of living hostages be freed in the first stage of the deal, and that the leverage for pressing for the release of all the hostages be included. Just yesterday morning, 2 Israeli citizens, pensioners, senior citizens, were murdered and 2 others were injured in a stabbing attack in the city of Holon. We share in the grief of the families and wish a speedy recovery to the injured. The terrorist was eliminated. Next, I want to bring your attention to the remarks made yesterday by the Prime Minister at the start of yesterday's cabinet meeting. They're all on the Prime Minister's website, so you can take a look at them there. But I just wanted to share with you, highlight a couple of points that are particularly prevalent and relate to the heightened current tensions. The state of Israel is in a multi-front war against Iran's axis of evil. We are striking every one of its arms with great force. We are preparing for any scenario, both offensively and defensively. The Prime Minister reiterates, and we say to our enemies, we will respond and we will exact a heavy price for any act of aggression against us from whatever quarter. Now an update from the Home Front Command. We are in strong readiness for the defence in the air, at sea and on land, and we are preparing for any sudden threat. The government will update any changes in defensive policy on the Home Front Command's platforms. While the defence of our country is not hermetic, we are encouraging our citizens to know the guidelines for the area they're in and to remain alert. In addition to the Home Front Command website and instructions, we've launched a new system called Personal Message. As of this moment, there are no change to the current status, but Personal Message is a system recognized by international standards. It sends defense alerts for sudden, large-scale emergency events. The alert is sent to mobile phones located in a threatened area. No need to download anything onto your phone. It's been used for worldwide warnings about large-scale threats such as earthquakes, but we have adapted it for alerts about threats like rocket and mortar fire. Again, it is not a replacement for other Home Front Command alert systems. If there is a message, it'll be accompanied by a designated sound and will appear immediately on the phone's screen. Now to Gaza. Yesterday saw the publication and the location and the neutralizing of large underground tunnels, large enough to drive a car through, and underground infrastructure in the Rafah area and the Philadelphia corridor, very close to the border with Egypt. Dozens of tunnels have been located and neutralized by our brave troops. Needless to say, and this goes for all of our comments here today, we are determined to continue acting against Iranian terrorism wherever it may be. For further updates on IDF activity, please see the IDF Telegram. Now an update from COGAT and their work coordinating aid into Gaza. We are surging humanitarian aid into Gaza with more and more going in every day. A daily average of 149 food trucks have entered Gaza during July, while prior to the war, the average was 70 food trucks a day entering Gaza. So in the last 24 hours, here's your update, 252 trucks carrying humanitarian aid goods went into Gaza. Trucks arrived from Israel, the port of Ashdod, and Egypt, and entered via Kerem Shalom and the Erez crossings. 5 tankers of fuel and 6 tankers of cooking gas went in for essential infrastructure. And a convoy entered Gaza via Gate 96. In terms of collections, 63 aid trucks were collected from Erez, 110 trucks were collected from Kerem Shalom, 70 by the private sector, and only 40 by the hapless, helpless and useless United Nations aid agencies. Currently, there remain around 600 truck worths of aid, 600 truck worths of aid that are simply waiting for the United Nations to get its act together to be collected from the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom, and another 15 trucks worth at the Erez crossing. Since the beginning of the war, 45,000 trucks have delivered 858,000 tons of humanitarian aid that have entered Gaza, 80% more food compared to prior to October the 7th. So that's the end of our briefing today. We'll now take your questions, which you should put in the chat together with your news outlet. Okay, first question here is from Dan Williams at Bloomberg. Firstly, what is your response to today's assertion by Iran that it seeks to reassert deterrence with Israel? Is this a bid to contain tensions? Thank you for that question, Dan. I can't possibly interpret anything that has come out of the Iranian leadership, the regime in Iran, because I'm a representative of a democratic government, not a genocidal, Islamist, fascist-style state that does not have elections, has show elections, abuses its own people, subjugates its own people, and does terrible things to them, and of course has developed terrorist proxies to wage a constant war with us that we're simply not prepared to allow, a war which seeks our destruction. So I can't possibly comment on anything which the regime in Tehran, the mullahs of Tehran, the tyrants of Tehran have said that you are repeating back to me. And as for their attempt to contain tensions, I mean, that is obviously farcical. This was a terrorist regime which waged war on us, has waged war on us for many years now, particularly on October the 7th, and we're currently fighting a 7-fronted war by Iran that is seeking to strangle us. But we are, of course, seeing down their terrorist proxies. We know how to deal with Iran in ways which we've already shown, and also in other ways which we have not shown you yet. And that means defensively and also offensively as well. Next question from Dan Williams of Bloomberg. Has the PMO activated the command bunker under the Jerusalem Hills? Are any officials already working out of it? Thank you for that question, Dan. Together with, I think, almost every single government or any responsible government around the world, Israel does have procedures to protect the government of this country in times of difficulty. Israel is, of course, no different, and we've had those things in place for many years now. This is a tough neighborhood to live in, perhaps the toughest neighborhood in the entire world to live in. We have unfortunately become used to genocidal terrorist regimes, organizations, but also genocidal countries like Iran that seek our destruction. They say it, we believe it, and so we've had to make appropriate measures to ensure that the government can continue. Okay, next question is from Joel Pollock at Breitbart News. There's a few questions here. Number one, historically, when faced with direct public threats from an enemy, Israel has not waited to be attacked, but has launched a preemptive strike to protect Israeli lives. Is the Biden administration preventing Israel from launching such a strike? Thank you for that question, Joel. You're right, there have in the past been some stunning preemptive strikes from this country that has not waited to be attacked when an attack looks imminent. It's been the motto, the creed which this country has lived by. Israel will take appropriate action with which has been guided by its elected government to protect the people of this country, and be in no doubt that this country will be protected. If there is a any preemptive action to be taken, it'll be mandated by the government and instructed to the IDF, which the IDF made clear, of course, that it will carry out the will of the Israeli government. Next question. US CENTCOM Commander General Kurilla is in Israel today. Can you comment on the significance of the decision by President Trump in 2021 to move Israel from European Command to Central Command? Thank you very much for that question, Joel. Let me put it this way. You know, Israel and the US have been side by side for decades. It's a bipartisan relationship. It has sustained through Democrat and Republican administrations. It's a very, very important relationship. It's based on shared values. As we've said many times, we're the only democracy in hundreds of miles in any direction, but also from shared enemies as well. Now, we share the enemy of Iran. Iran say extremely clearly that they wish to destroy this country. But they say we're only a stopgap on the way to the US and other democracies. You know, they formed a stranglehold against Israel. It's a ring of armed terror armies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and other militias. But be in no doubt that Israel will exact a heavy price for aggression against us from any arena. And let me make this absolutely clear. Our long arm will reach anyone who causes harm to our civilians. Now, we've already shown that the elimination of the commanders of the military wings of both Hamas and Hezbollah sends a clear message to anyone who threatens Israel. For instance, Mohammed Daif, head of the Hamas military wing, who was directly responsible for planning and the execution of hundreds of deadly terrorist attacks against Israeli citizens, and for the crimes against humanity, the brutal massacres, the rapes, the kidnappings of our civilians as part of the horrific terror attack on October 7th. And of course, Fuad Shukr of Hezbollah, one of the most wanted terrorists in the world. Hezbollah's chief of staff was considered number 2 in the hierarchy of Hezbollah terror organization. He served as liaison to Iran. It's always Iran behind these terror attacks and these terror proxies. And he was in charge of the organization's rocket array. Shukr was responsible for many murderous attacks against Israelis. Not only Israelis, Americans and others, including the attack against the Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983, which killed 241 American servicemen and 58 French soldiers. His name was on the American list of the most wanted terrorists with a $5 million bounty on his head. So look, the United States and all of our allies, they're standing together with Israel. The international community must it must stand up to the dangerous ambitions of Iran, which clearly states its intentions to destroy our state, the state of Israel, and it threatens both regional stability and the free world. We're only a stopgap on the way to the rest of the world. No one should be in any doubt thinking that this Iranian threat doesn't affect them. If you're a democracy, it affects you. Their revolutionary brand of the distorted and revolutionary brand of Islamism seeks to destroy us, but only as a stopgap on the way to others in the free world. No one should be in any doubt about that, and I think most governments in the world understand that fact. Certainly our allies do. Next question is number 3. President Biden said that the death of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh has not helped, rather than welcoming it and using it to pressure Hamas for a deal. Could you comment on his reaction? Thank you for that question, Joel. As I mentioned to you before, we are side by side with our allies, shoulder to shoulder. We have so many shared values as well as shared enemies as well. And in this battle against Iran, we are again standing side by side. The Americans talk about our relationship, the defense of Israel, being an ironclad commitment. It's a commitment we very much welcome. But of course, it's a two-way commitment, because we're on the front line of this genocidal regime of Iran, and we must stand up to them to stop them coming to the shores of the USA and to other democracies. Next question, number 4. All over Facebook and social media, Israelis are expressing anxiety about an expected attack. Can you describe the public mood? Thank you for that question, Joel. So look, I'm here on the ground here in Israel, and what I see are the shopping malls are bustling, the schools are off, the kids are off school, they're all busy doing their things. Supermarkets are busy, the supermarket shelves thankfully are full, and Israel continues to carry on life as usual. We know, of course, that we live in the most dangerous neighborhood anywhere in the world. This is a tough place to live, but of course we have a 3,000-year-old link to this country. This country was created 76 years ago as a bulwark to say no more will Jewish people be facing anti-Semitism and have no one to defend them. This is the only Jewish state in the world. I think every one of our citizens here knows that and appreciates that. Yes, of course, we are on high alert. There's no doubt about that. But I'll tell you what the mood is here. It is defiance and it is determination. This country will be defended. All of our people are determined to face down this wicked regime in Iran, which is behind this 7-fronted battle against terror, which we're currently facing. They seek to wipe this country off the face of the earth. That will not happen. All of us are after victory, victory at all costs, total victory, as the Prime Minister puts it. That's the mood here right now. Next question from Hannah Julian at the Jewish Press. Egypt has announced it will not help defend Israel from Iran despite its treaty with the Jewish state. Reaction? Thank you for that question, Hannah. That sounds like a question for Egypt, but I will say this, that this genocidal regime in Iran is not only after us. Egypt should understand, as they do understand, that Hamas are their enemy as well. They're a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, which oversaw the attack on the Egyptian government, the Muslim Brotherhood. They're our enemy, of course, here in Israel, but they're also your enemy in Egypt as well. I think the leadership of Egypt knows that. Look, Egypt is the largest Arab country in the world. The peace treaty we have with them now. I remember a time when the peace treaty between Israel and the largest Arab nation in the world, Egypt, was thought of as impossible. It could never happen. It has been established. It has stood the test of time. Sometimes it's described as a cold peace, but there is a lot of cooperation between our two countries because we share the same enemy, and Iran is that enemy. I think Egypt knows that, and no matter what they say in public, I think that their leadership knows that for sure. Next question from Jim Williams at Zenga International News. There have been a number of reports that the PM doesn't want to do a hostage ceasefire deal until after the US elections in November. I've checked with both the State Department and the White House, and they said the PM does want a deal. Can you confirm that any report the PM doesn't want to do a deal is simply 100% wrong? Thank you very much for that question, Jim. Thank you for raising it. It's an important point. Let me just lay out the government's position on the deal. As the Prime Minister has said, look, on the negotiations on a hostage release deal, it is Hamas that continues its refusal, as it has done all the way through 303 days into this war. It is Hamas that has meant that there has not been agreement. It continues to change clauses in the agreement. It continues to entrench itself with unreasonable demands. Now, let me say this completely clearly. The Prime Minister and the government of Israel is prepared to go very far to release all of our hostages, while of course maintaining the security of this country. There are so many reports, mendacious briefings on this issue of our hostages, Jim, which you rightly point out. You know, there are lots of discussions in the media, much of them erroneous, over many, many things. But the issue here is that these reports, they mislead our hostages' dear families, and they create a false impression that Hamas has agreed, if only it would have, that Hamas has agreed to a deal, even though their friends in Al Jazeera constantly say that, while the government of Israel is opposed to it. Nothing could be further from the truth. That's the complete opposite of the truth. The simple truth is that as of now, Hamas have not agreed to the most basic conditions of the outline. So while we have not added even a single demand to the outline which was originally welcomed by President Biden, it is Hamas which has demanded dozens. They've asked to add dozens of changes. It has not withdrawn its demand that Israel not be able to return to the wall. It demands that we withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor and the Rafah crossing. I think those tunnels which we showed evidence of, large enough to drive a vehicle through, large enough to drive a Hummer, a huge vehicle through. It's its lifeline, it's Hamas's oxygen. So we simply cannot allow them, Hamas, to rearm and rebuild its strength. It's important to determine the principle. We are not leaving from the Philadelphia crossing, that crucial corridor, that crucial piece of land which goes right up to the Egyptian border, because it's a lifeline for Hamas. Now, Hamas is also unprepared to allow any mechanism to check for and prevent the passage of munitions and terrorists in the northern Gaza Strip. It's doing all this because it wants to recover and to rebuild and to return again and again to the massacre of October 7th. They say it very, very clearly. They have promised to do it. And on this fact, on this, we believe them. The fact is that it's Hamas which is preventing the release of our hostages, and it continues to oppose the outline, and not, of course, the government of Israel, obviously, which we have accepted it. So whoever, like us, wants the release of our hostages, we need to put direct pressure onto Hamas and not onto the government of Israel. For our part, from the Prime Minister and the government, we will continue to apply military pressure on Hamas and its senior figures, because we know that this is what gets results until the return of all our hostages and we've achieved all of the objectives for this war. I hope, Jim, that has answered that question in the clearest way that I know how. Okay, are there any other questions? No, that was the last question. Just check again. Yeah, that was the last question. Okay, so in the meantime, thank you for joining us. We'll have another update tomorrow at the same time. We're available for interview, just be in touch. And we have these briefings every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday at 3:30 Israel time. Thank you for joining us, and please do stay safe. Bye-bye now.